Now, I'm not a violent person, but... Okay, just hear me out. I think there's a primal part in all of our brains that enjoys seeing destruction. Explosions, suplexes, that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure I'm not a psychopath. I don't want to see people actually suffering. But when the violence is cartoony and over the top, I can't help but love it. As such, I really enjoy action games that focus on deeply impactful melee combat. Now, this video is partially just an excuse to gush over how awesome Lost Judgment's EX actions are, which are basically ass-kicking cutscene super moves. But there are aspects of EX actions that I'd like to see other games in the genre prioritize as well. Not to say that the other games that pop up in this video are bad by any means. I'm actually a big fan of all these games. I simply think EX actions are an excellent example of doing everything exceptionally well. What do I mean by everything? Well, I think it's best to break down EX actions into 5 factors: enemy hit reactions, camera work, structure mastery, sound design, and special effects. We'll be focusing on the presentation of EX actions and how it relates to other games, as opposed to just the specific techniques on display. Starting with the enemy hit reactions. The animations of an enemy's response to an attack are a powerful yet commonly underutilized tool in emphasizing the force behind attacks. It's a huge part of what lends significance and weight to an attack. Strikes that cause overly generic and weak reactions come off as trite. For example, air combos struggle with this because how do you even react to attacks in the air like that in a sensical manner? Aerial combos aren't grounded in reality. As a result, it's really hard to make things seem like they hurt in the sky unless an attack sends someone hurtling away at literal breakneck speeds, at which point you can no longer continue the combo. Hit reactions need to accentuate attacks. Techniques that are extremely similar can feel totally different depending on how the opponent reacts to it. Just check out the difference between a forward kick and a forward kick, or the difference between strikes in regular gameplay and strikes that are part of a grab. Grabs and supers in fighting games tend to make even basic strikes feel really goddamn cool, because the opponent reactions are typically animated better. But even normal attacks outside of grabs and supers stand to gain from better hit reactions. I find Virtua Fighter combat and combos to be among the most interesting visually in the entire genre, even without flashy effects, mainly because of how the receiver can bounce and flail around in so many different ways. An industry that is incredibly familiar with this concept is pro wrestling, as in WWE wrestling, not Olympic wrestling. They know it's all about how you sell an attack. Old WWE games were really good about this. They lived and died by their enormous variety of unique animations for grapples and reversals. They even commonly had several variations of the same technique being sold in different ways. I spent so much time as a child going through every move and picking out the ones I liked best for my created character. It was like a flea market for savagery. I'd also spend an excessive amount of time beating the shit out of my enemies with weapons and grapples, even after they were ready to be pinned from being out of health. But everyone was violently deranged like that growing up. Right? It's a damn shame these games in 2021 aren't quite what they used to be. Basically, every melee action game can benefit from having better hit reactions. I'm not saying every attack needs to trigger cutscenes. Generic hit reactions have their place in games. I mean, they're actually kind of necessary for gameplay purposes. I'm saying that it's best to make a wider variety of hit reactions for a game, whether that means having more cutscene-like special attacks with deliberate animations, or having a more expansive pool of generic hit reactions. Special moves, especially, can make good use of enemy reactions to sell that feeling of devastation. The only ones that get a pass are sprite-based games, since adding more animations would be absurdly expensive for them. I mean, it'd be nice to have, but the poor souls have to painstakingly handcraft every freaking frame. They have enough on their plate. On to camera work, which is tied to the directing of the scene. Okay, so I'm nowhere near an expert in filmmaking techniques or film directing or anything of the sort. However, I do seriously appreciate what's going on in these EX actions, so I'll do my best with this analysis as a layman. If you are an expert, sorry, you're probably gonna have to grit your teeth to get through this amateur analysis. With that said, let's look at this Tire Mode Barrage EX action as an example. Firstly, it's showing off the technique of the kicks with the camera angle behind the player character that best shows off the swift movement of the legs. Then it cuts to a side angle where you can see both characters, so you can best view the badass triple jump kick. More leg technique focus, and a focus on the blow connecting in the pained face of the enemy to emphasize the copious amount of ass being kicked here. A few cuts to build up the final attack, and bang! There's the payoff. It replays the final attack to make sure you truly feel it, getting closer to the enemy's face that's smashed in the pavement with each repeat. Now let's watch that back normally. Small note, the camera angles for EX actions can differ slightly whenever you perform them. I think my point still stands though, since the framing of the shots are always great, and I'm pretty sure it's always the same number of camera cuts. Every second of every camera cut feels purposeful. In this EX action, the camera makes sure you can see the "oh shit" on the enemy's face as a foreshadowing of the player's foot coming in hot. The camera work is constantly maximizing either the cool factor or the power factor. There's also camera movement and screen shaking to enhance the brutality of these maneuvers. All the camera movement and zoom might seem excessive to some people, which is a matter of preference. It's definitely a stylistic choice here to make the EX actions as ridiculously over the top as possible. I personally think the camera movement is great, really amps everything up. Another point which might be obvious, the characters take up a very large portion of the screen, which has the effect of amplifying everything. Like here, this heat move is literally just stabbing someone. This shit happens every day in New York, but it feels hilariously extreme in part because of the camera work. Close cameras can easily end up being disorienting, and therefore require meticulous placement. I'm just saying that if you want something to feel intense, the cameraman needs to get up in there. The developer's passion for what they're creating shines through in the camera work. Common martial arts movie filmmaking techniques are used here, like how jump cuts sometimes move a little bit backwards in time to ensure the blow connecting is captured in full. By the way, go watch Every Frame a Painting's video on Jackie Chan if you have any interest in this kind of stuff. It's a fantastic video. I can imagine the developers fine-tuning the camera work of an EX action, watching it over and over until it feels just right, and finally sitting back and watching the final version of the deadly maneuver with a sinister smile on their faces. This is a hard factor to truly perfect since you're practically directing a mini movie here. Some developers might not want to mess around with jump cuts to avoid the risk of being disorienting or otherwise excessive. But good camera work is amazing when done right. Like, check this out. It's so goddamn cool. That is such a good angle. I think camera work is something developers have collectively been getting better with over time as they gain familiarity and practice with it. On to structure mastery. Super moves are structured like a roller coaster ride. You creep to the top of a hill during a phase I'll be calling the build up, and then whoa, you begin the drop, you scream in exhilaration, you throw your hands up, you throw your launch up, you're enjoying what I'll be calling the payoff. During an EX action, suspense mounts as the incoming finishing blow is hyped up with slow motion, different camera angles, and airplane sound effects. Then bang, the attack explosively connects. Time might slow to a crawl as you see the enemy's body crumple like an empty soda can. Maybe throw some instant replays in there or a shot of the unfortunate enemy's face, and finish with a slight flourish as things wind down and you return to regular gameplay. There's also always a focus on being able to view the blow actually connecting with the enemy. This roller coaster ride formula, this basis of build up and payoff, can be considered the foundation of any special attack. This formula is widely followed. Just look at basically any fighting game super duper attack. Check out this super. There's a clear focus on the build-up for the final attack. This rage art is a similar example. This factor is clearly pretty well developed in most games. Developers know that a finishing move has to have some pomp and circumstance to it. Although I feel like the build-up overpowers the payoff in many instances. So there could be more work going into emphasizing the destructive effect of the attacks, which goes hand in hand with performing all the other factors in this video well. One thing to keep in mind, avid players might see these special moves hundreds of times, so there's a delicate balance to be struck between a drawn-out, dramatic technique and a snappy one. Now for sound. Everyone knows it's important. I'm saying it's really important. Jet engines sell the supersonic speed and power of an incoming kick. Loud crunch noises signify the shattering of bones, and enemies are constantly screaming in agony and fear. Listing it all out like this makes me sound like I need to be institutionalized, but I promise it's less psychotic and more dumb fun in action. For real though, the sounds don't have to be brutal to work. They can be anything as long as it feels powerful. Like, I have no idea what makes this sound in real life, but damn does hearing it feel great. Finally, a brief note about special effects and raw graphics. Honestly, this is a pretty superficial factor, but come on, are you telling me humans aren't superficial? The colorful sparks make the EX moves a feast for the eyes, and Lost Judgment is pretty good looking graphically. There's really no intricacy here. Me like pretty thing. That's it. All of these 5 factors, and some factors I'm sure I've overlooked, combine to create exquisite sequences of violence. Lost Judgment, and by extension the rest of the Yakuza franchise, isn't the only one to do extravagant cutscene super attacks. Dragon Ball games have been doing it pretty well in both years long past and recent times. There's also most fighting games these days. But Lost Judgment is exceptional in terms of both quality and quantity. It feels like every aspect of EX actions were honed to perfection, and there's such a wide variety of EX actions to the point where most players probably don't even see half of them in game. By the way, do yourself a favor and watch a compilation of EX actions online. I promise it's worth it. I get that doing things the exact way Lost Judgment does things isn't always appropriate. A couple examples. I imagine Spider-Man's finishers are deliberately non-intrusive in terms of camera work and short. I also can't imagine what great hit reaction animations for air combos would even look like, even though I still think air combos are a cool gameplay mechanic. Furthermore, I find sprite-based games to be gorgeous, but going above and beyond with 2D animation in the ways I've mentioned might be unreasonably expensive and time-consuming. I'm just saying there's definitely room in this genre for developers to tap into that deeply visceral experience of an EX move in various ways, whether that means improving on hit reactions, camera work, payoffs, sound effects, or special effects. And while we're at it, bring back Tekken Force, and make good wrestling games again. I guess what I'm saying is, why aren't more people making stuff like this? I just want to see people get destroyed, man! Hello, it's Chico. Leave a like on the video for more of my stuff like this to be recommended to you and others like you. Check out my channel and maybe subscribe for more similar videos. Thanks for hanging out.